Jason, I did something kind of crazy this last week.
I know I heard, and I've been trying to avoid talking about it so we can get it on the show. So, what did you do?
Well, so I've debated on how to approach talking about it because it's definitely tech related.
Right?
And the tech is a huge part of why I went a little crazy versus just following the plan that never came together.
Yeah.
So if you
Right.
if you understand that reference, you can go back to our 80s TV shows episode. But so here's the deal. We've been planning to trade in our car for a long time. So
Yeah.
we bought a car from my grandma a few years ago. Dustin drove it for a little bit, and then we've been driving it. And it's like a 1993 or 1996 Pontiac.
Mm-hmm.
Put it this way. She had driven it so little over the course of the decade or two that she owned it that the tires were still appeared to be in perfect condition from a tread standpoint. But
Right.
when you looked on the inside, they were so old that they had started to crack.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, this car was in great shape. It's now got over 100,000 miles on it. Fine. It was okay to drive around town. Started to have some issues. The power steering makes this really, really loud whining sound. And
Mm-hmm.
anyway, it was fine for these short rides around town or maybe drive it 20 miles up to the temple. But the challenge we have now down here, and we knew this was coming, was that we think we're going to be going back quite often for family. We haul the kids around in it, and the car seats barely fit in the back seat.
Yeah.
Right. So in order to make the 3-hour drive to see family, including through weather when it comes winter, because 30 minutes from here, you're in the middle of much higher altitude and snow and all that kind of stuff during the winter. So
Mm-hmm.
it just wasn't gonna cut it. So we wanted something more reliable, comfortable, and better able to handle, the drives on a semi-regular basis to see family.
Right.
So
Right. I think,
there's the
like,
context.
as men, I think we can deal with some things, right? We'll sacrifice comfort. We'll sacrifice all those extra features and stuff like that. But when you talk about putting the family on the road multiple times a week or multiple times a month, you kind of want them to be comfortable too.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see that. We put aside our comfort, but yeah, when it comes to the family, especially the wives and the grandkids and stuff, you want them to be a little more comfortable than you
Yep.
would.
Yep. So we knew what we wanted. We had an idea of what we thought would work. So one of the
Mm-hmm.
keys, right, was taking the car seats with us to make sure that they would fit in whatever we chose to go with. So we did
Okay.
that a couple of times as we
Good
went through this
move.
process. Yeah, yeah. Let's just say that there were some unexpected developments as we went through this process.
Right.
Now, the outcome is absolutely awesome. It's a great choice for us, I think. But looking back, I still can't believe how it played out and how much my plans got turned upside down.
Yep.
Yeah. So does that sound intriguing?
It does. It does.
Are there thoughts going through your head, Jason?
There is, because at this point, folks, I don't even know what type of car it is. I have an idea because, Greg and we talked about it before, but I still don't even know what type of car it is yet. So, yep, I'm excited.
All right. Well, for those of you watching, if this sounds interesting or intriguing at all, stick around because cue the music. This is the Gadgets for Families Tech Show, where you get two grandpas, that would be us, sharing their opinions about tech and most anything else. Most anything. So I'm your host, Greg, or Grumpy Greg, or the grandpa that does some crazy things.
Yep, and it does sound like you did something crazy this week. I'm your host, Jason Benjamin. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode today. And we will be sharing our opinions about cars, of all things.
Yeah, we got to talk about why here in a second. So this wasn't my original plan for today, at least not to the extent that it will probably turn out to be. I mean, I thought I'd have a few things to share, but and
Hmm.
then at first I thought, let's just talk about car tech in general. But when I mentioned this to you, Jason, you said, no, we need to talk about your experience and why you did what you did and why you threw your plan out the window for the most part. I'm still not totally comfortable with it, but we're going to give it a shot.
Right, right.
So,
Because this is a tech show, right? We love to talk about tech, but this is a life show too, right? If we're going to give advices and tell people what iPads to buy and what MacBooks to buy and things like that, I think we can spread that knowledge around a bit and share things like car purchases and stuff like that too. So yeah, let's share it all,
all right.
not just the tech stuff.
All right. Well, we do have a few other things. We've got some current event stuff we have to do. I've got a tiny tip question for Jason to help with a family internet situation. We've got a couple other tips that we're going to throw in there real fast. And really fast follow up on things that came from Prime Day. So some of the things that we kind of hadn't had yet, to talk about where we are with those. And then we're going to talk about my car shopping experience and then the tech aspects of that. So I'll talk about what my plan was, what we wanted, and then how the plan went out the window and why. So that's, and really, um, other than really it came down to tech. Tech
Yep.
was why the plan kind of went out the window. So, um, and here's the thing, Jason. Today, cars are almost more tech than they are
Right.
car,
Right.
right?
Right.
And if you think about, you used to be able to pop open the hood, not me, but others, you used to be able to pop open the hood and fix something, but now you almost
Hmm.
need a degree in computer engineering in order to go in and do some of the things that you need to do
Right.
on a car. And so that factored into part of our purchase. But and also that's why I think it's a bummer that Apple didn't continue to pursue the Apple car, right? They've backed off that project. And
Yep.
um I don't personally don't know that Tesla's long for this world, the way the company is being handled, not necessarily for the tech. I think they might end up having to get acquired or something like that. But anyway, that's
Right.
probably a day for another show. But as far as tech goes, some of these things we're going to talk about, I had no clue were even available in a car outside of like a Tesla or a Rivian.
Hmm.
So I did not go with one of those. I went with one of the big car makers. Um, so anyway, I'd really want to make this more about that tech, talk about my experience, but more about those things than my exact purchase, because there is still a little bit of buyer's guilt or whatever you want to call it that's associated with that. So
Right. Right. And like we were saying when we talked about it briefly, buyer's remorse, that's normal. That's a normal feeling. As long as you don't feel like you were taken for a ride. Boom, boom.
dad joke, grandpa joke.
As long as you don't feel like you were taken for a ride, then that's fine. And I don't get that sense as we're talking about it that you feel like you were, taken advantage of or ripped off or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think give it a few more days. You'll be happy with this purchase. So
Yeah. Well, I'm happy with it as it is. We'll see when the first payment comes due, but
right.
we'll go through that a little bit. So, and then I thought, since we're talking about cars, for our bonus show on the YouTube channel or the post show, um, on the podcast, we'll just talk about our first cars and or our favorite cars. So just have a old guy discussion about back in my day, my car,
Yep.
right?
I
So,
had some pretty some pretty interesting picks,
yep.
back in my day. So
All right.
that's gonna
So
be
that's the
fun.
plan for today. Now, before jumping in, just a huge thanks to those that watch and listen. Slowly but surely, seeing the numbers climb, just a little itty bit at a time. That's fine. It's a journey. Jason and I just enjoy doing this, and as long as we are helping someone with our experiences, they can learn from us, then we'll do our best to keep at it. So thank you very much. Appreciate the comments, even those that are just dropping in saying, hey, glad you guys put out this episode. Whatever it is, interact with us. It makes us feel better about putting in the time and effort to put the show
Right.
together. So
Right. Thank you guys.
Hey, Jason, I understand you have just a little bit of catch up before we dive into current stuff today. What's going on in your life? Had any free time lately?
Yeah, a little bit, a tiny bit. So we've been having some pretty severe weather here in Houston and a lot of rainouts, which from a company standpoint, we prepare for. You know, we were out this past weekend. Well, my wife was out this past weekend. I spent some time in the shop and then it was back to work here in the home. But she said she got the comment a couple of times, like, "Where have you guys been? Where have you guys? We hadn't seen you." And she was like, "Well, we've been working. We've just we hadn't had the need to be at some of these locations that it was a must that we were at, in the summer and when there's severe weather." So um, they were like, "Where have you been?" We prepare pretty good for these times where we get rainouts, right? Especially during hurricane season, sometimes we can get rained out for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, and we have to account for that, and we have to make sure that we're able to meet payroll and buy supplies and stuff like that. So we're used to being able to prepare for these types of things. So with that being said, the weather has after the hurricane that we had, we've still been getting a lot of rainy days, and they've been on the days that matter: Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Of course, the weather is nice and it's nice and sunny and dry. Thursday hits and we start getting some high rain. So last week we had a few rainouts. We took that time to redo the kids' rooms. So my middle son is officially a teenager now, along with all of those teenage problems that come up. Greg, you've experienced that several times. So he wanted to get rid of his old Minecraft room. He had a Minecraft theme. We painted all the squares and stuff on the wall, and he wanted a big kid room, which is his teenage room, which is going to be his style room until he's off to college. So we did some remodeling, new bed, new paint on the walls, new floor, um, uh, from floor to ceiling. We painted and all of that. So that's what I spent my time doing last week was a lot of demolition and construction work and, and carpentry and things like that. So we're putting the final touches on his room now. Then we started in my daughter's room Saturday. Um, and it was just painting an accent wall. We tore down she had a platform bed that we kind of customized on top of her dressers and cabinets and stuff like that. And she had a little play area underneath. She didn't want that anymore. We tore all of that out, and now she has a bed and she has much more space in her room. We moved her swing. She had a swing it's a chair kind of swing. I don't know what they call it exactly. It's not a hammock, but it's just like a single chair, but it kind of hangs from the ceiling. We moved that and added some paint and some LED lights under her bed, and now her floor glows with the same accent color as the wall. It looks really nice in there, and the kids they were excited about it. They really enjoyed it. So that's what I did with my time. So although I didn't get much pop life in last week, I got in some carpentry work. So a lot of trips to Home Depot, and as Greg mentioned last week, that can be really expensive. You go in thinking, "Oh, I'm just going to get some caulking and some glue and some paint, a couple of cans of paint," and a few $100s later, you're sitting in the car like, "Wow, I should have stayed home." So,
Yeah, I did make one more trip to Home Depot last week, but it was not nearly as expensive as those first couple. I
right,
do need
right.
to I got to get one more of these storage boxes that I have outside, but I think I'm going to order it on Amazon because they have them a little cheaper and different
Okay.
sizes.
Okay. Remember that one at Sam's I told you about? I mentioned. I believe it was probably around the same price, but the value, the quality of it is really good.
Yeah.
They usually have that display in the front, no, that demo model in the front as you're walking out. And I never stopped to really examine it, but just looking at it from the outside, it looks like it's pretty good quality. So check that one out too to make sure there's no discounts on that because we're getting towards the end of the summer.
Just a few current item things. I've got a couple, and then Jason's got a couple. But 17.6 iPhone, iPad, watch, the 10.6, whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
All of those things dropped. I got them installed on both of my iPads and my phone this morning. It's really bug fixes at this point. This might
Okay.
be the last set of bug fixes too before we see 18, because we're only 6 weeks out from
Right.
18 dropping. So, but there is a catch up feature for live sports. I assume that's, hey, I'm behind. How do I get caught up on the live sports stuff? It's for soccer right now, but Apple's still working on other sports deals. So nothing really, really feature wise. There's a rumor about 2026, a folding iPhone, right up
I
my
saw that.
alley.
I saw that.
Yeah. The rumor is that they've switched from working on a folding iPad, they switched over to the phone, and that panel orders have already been placed with Samsung. So that's a
Okay.
big deal, right? If they're requesting actual physical materials from a supplier. So we'll see.
Hmm.
I'm going to keep my eye on that one, because I haven't heard anything in the iPhone 16 rumor mill that tells me I'm going to absolutely have to upgrade to the 16 this year.
Right.
So there's a lot of rumors about the 17, including an iPhone 17 Ultra, which is supposed to be a slimmer, redesigned version of the Pro phones. They said the Plus model is going to go away,
Hmm.
which I find that interesting. That means that people want bigger phones, but they want the bigger Pro phone, right? So,
Right.
but anyway, we'll see what plays out of that. That's still over a year away. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, those are a couple of rumors that I saw. Jason, what have you got for us?
Yeah. Well, back to the Plus model going away. I can see that. I think people not only do they want the bigger phone, but they want that better camera,
That
right? And
camera,
that better
yeah,
screen, the better screen technology, which they usually put. So I can see that. I'm glad that they played around with that, right? To see if people just want a bigger screen on a base model phone, or do they actually want an improved phone? And I can see an Ultra taking all of that away, right? If you look at the iPads, you can only get, well, before, they don't have a 13 inch regular iPad, right? You either have to get the Pro model, and just this past release cycle, you can get the Air now and a
right,
13-inch model. So I'm glad they did the Plus for the people who wanted a big screen, but I just don't see people just spending the extra for a bigger screen on that base model. So it makes
yeah,
sense. And 17 Ultra with the beautiful screen, an OLED screen, a bigger size with the better camera, the faster processor and stuff. I think that's more of people's alleys than just a bigger base model phone. So,
yeah.
um, yesterday, 18.1 released the beta for iOS
Developer beta,
18.1.
right?
The developer beta only, no public beta, and probably won't be a public beta until after the release of iOS 18. So 18.1, of course, is not anywhere near a release, right? This one's 18, iOS 18 is going to release long before beta 1 releases, right? iOS 18.1 releases. Now, the beta version of this introduces Apple Intelligence, right, which is their AI platform. And that's going to give you the AI assistant to writing, drawing, and just thinking for yourself in general, right? Now, if you need assistance with thinking for yourself, um, Apple Intelligence is going to help you with that. But our disclaimer, as usual, don't install this on any devices that you need for work, school, just living your life, period. This is not something that is for the general public, right? It's going to be full of bugs. It's going to be full of issues, and that's what these developer betas are for. It's for people who are developing applications and different things for iOS. It's for them to get their hands on early to make sure that this doesn't break their applications, or their applications break functions of the phone and things like that. So not for the general public. Don't play around with it if you don't if again, if this is a mission critical device, right? Not your work device, definitely not a device that doesn't belong to you. It belongs to your company or something like that. Just avoid it. It's nowhere near. I hadn't even watched any other than just the installation videos. Hadn't seen any major issues or things like that. I'm going to check that out today, but definitely avoid it. But if you want to get in on these betas, there's a second public beta release as well for iPad OS, iOS, tvOS, and Mac OS. So if you want to get in on those public betas, those are generally a little more stable. They're still beta software, right? These are still you're gonna open it up and your keyboard is gonna be missing. None of your emojis are gonna be there. Weird things like the calendar crashing and stuff like that. These are still beta softwares. They're still gonna have issues. So I do want to give you that warning. But public betas are so public testers can get in and give their opinions and find bugs and issues and things to report to Apple. So this thing can be ready for a general release in mid to late September.
Yeah, I
So
still don't have any betas on anything. I'm
yeah,
thinking about loading the iPad OS public beta, but thinking about it does not
right.
always translate into actually doing it. So
Yeah, and it involves even for us, even for tech guys, it's going to involve a lot of restarting, a lot of soft restarts, a lot of killing apps and things like that. Which just your average person who just wants to use the phone, you're not going to want to do that, right? Again, there are several times I open up an app and went to reply. Also, too, a bug that I've been seeing since the beginning has been with the autofill, right? It'll autofill a word as you're typing. If you delete that, it deletes the whole word. Like it'll only leave the first two or three letters that you type. That's been a bug from the start. So just little minor annoyances like that, which forces me to kill the app or do a soft reset. Again, my emoji keyboard was always missing. It just opens blank for whatever reason, and that was kind of corrected with the last update, but I still see it from time to time. So if you don't want to deal with stuff like that, just avoid the betas completely. Just stay on the iOS 17 release cycle until the release candidate comes out, or until it officially drops
we're
in
getting
September.
close,
Yeah,
right? I mean, if
yeah,
they do an event the second week of September, somewhere in that range, and announce the new phones, then you figure a week later the actual 18 drops, because if they do the event on a Tuesday, pre-orders on Friday,
right.
delivery the next Friday, and usually the iOS version drops on that Monday in between those, the
Yeah,
pre-orders and the drops, Monday or Tuesday, somewhere in that range. So yeah.
yeah. So your patience is paying off. If you hadn't jumped on any of the betas, just go ahead and avoid them for now. But um,
Yeah.
they'll be out soon. Like Greg said, we're getting pretty close to them. So the last thing I have is the Olympics. I'm wearing my Team USA track team shirt. The Olympics
I
have
got my watch
officially
band.
started.
My
Oh
watch band.
yeah,
So 4 years ago, Apple did a whole bunch of country specific watch bands. And so this is the
right.
USA one. And then I got the Brazil one. So I'm wearing the USA one today.
Yep. And it's I've been enjoying that. I enjoy the Olympics whenever they come around every 4 years. This year was a shorter one because they Japan did it in 2021 because of COVID and all of that. So it seems like we just finished up with the last Olympics, but yeah, it's been great. The opening ceremonies, despite all of the heat they've been getting from different groups and things, I can see how some people would be offended. The opening ceremonies I thought were one of the best that I've seen. Um, really good, despite again all of the stuff, the controversial stuff that was in it. Um, Watching Celine Dion with all of the things that she's been through, seeing her on top of the Eiffel Tower, man, giving that powerful performance was just amazing. Um, really, yeah, it was just really the cauldron that they lit. Um, the last person, that last athlete to hand off to the two that lit the cauldron was one of the oldest Olympic medalists in France's history. All of that type of stuff, man. I love all of that, and yeah, it's really been great. I've been enjoying it. So of course, track starts next week. That's what I think that everyone kind of looks forward to, that and the gymnastics, and of course the USA basketball Team USA team. Those kind of really stand out. But all of those folks, the swim team. I even watched some mountain biking yesterday, Greg. which was really cool. I didn't realize uh, the technology and stuff that goes into those bikes. I know that they're, they're heavier duty bikes, but I watched the guy. He had to get his tire changed, so he stopped in the pit real quick, and it's just a bolt, and they pulled it out and changed the tire, stuck the bolt in there, tightened it up, and he was back on and riding. And
Yep.
yeah, mountain biking is pretty cool hobby. I didn't
Well,
realize how big that mountain was that they were riding up and
yeah,
down, but really
yeah.
cool.
At some point, we need to talk about e-bikes. We still
Yeah,
haven't
yeah.
gotten to mine, but so good news. Utah got officially picked for the Winter Olympics. I think it's 2036, 34, whichever one it is. So
Okay.
right in that range. So yeah, Utah will have the Winter Olympics again. They had them once
Nice.
already. Mitt Romney, who's the senator from Utah, was the
Hmm.
head of the Olympics, got pulled in to try and make sure it went the way it was supposed to. But yeah, Utah's got the Winter Olympics again. So that'll be
Yeah.
coming up. And I'll probably go to none of it because it's all snow and cold.
Right, right. Well, it's still a good experience, though. I'm sure
Yeah. Yep.
that'll be fun. So, but that was all I had, guys. Check out the Olympics.
All right. So, a couple of tips here. I've got a couple of quick ones, but I have a question for Jason. So,
Hmm.
give a little context, and maybe this will help somebody else too. So, I was at my in laws for a couple of months, and my father in law built his home, right? So, it's not a young home. So it's got
And it's
thick
solid,
wall.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Solid.
It's got these thick walls. It's on 2 stories. They've got this big backyard and stuff like that. So I was having problems with the internet, which is why I got my T-Mobile stuff when I got it, right?
Hmm.
But I still put in the Eero and a repeater, Eero extender, right? And
Right.
that's how I got coverage everywhere I wanted coverage there. But since I've been gone, I don't think they notice it because 99.9% of what they do is on their phones, right?
Right.
But yesterday, my mother-in-law was trying to send me pictures of the mail we got because we still have some of our mail being delivered there. And it took like an hour before the pictures came through. I mean, to the point where I had already called her and said, "Hey, let's just talk through this," and she talked me through it.
Hmm.
So, but she's had this problem on and off, and so I got thinking, okay, what can I do to solve this problem? I don't want to put mesh in just because it's overkill and it's too expensive, but it would be nice because where it's run in is in the study, which is in the middle on the front side of the upper floor. Then they've got the basement, and then they've got the back porch where they
Hmm.
spend a lot of time. So I got thinking, mesh is overkill. It's too expensive just to power a couple of phones, right? To surf
Right.
Facebook because they probably don't even notice it when they're just surfing social media. But it'd be nice if they had a little more solid connection. And so I had looked at these when I was having the internet issues there, and I wanted your opinion on just buying a couple of Wi-Fi repeaters and sticking
Hmm.
one down in the basement and one up in the kitchen window so it floods the backyard a little bit better. So,
Right.
Jason,
Right.
I know they're not Euros, I know they're not mesh networks, but for this situation, is it going to help at all?
It will help, but I think it'll cause more problems than it helps. But like with everything else with Wi-Fi repeaters, what I've found is you get what you pay for. We've mentioned several times on the show. If you hadn't heard, I'm pretty frugal, as Greg likes to say. I think I'm cheap, and I tried all levels of Wi-Fi repeaters. Right, you can go on Best Buy or even Amazon, eBay, wherever you do your shopping, and you can literally find repeaters from $15 all the way up to like a couple of $100. Right. This is the problem. I've noticed that all of the cheaper ones, the cost effective or inexpensive ones. I want to use cost effective, right? Because if we're talking about cost, you want something that works. The price will warrant how much you pay for it. But some of the cheaper, more inexpensive ones really don't work as good, right? They'll work good until you need it, right? You get it set up. They'll work good on the phone. Then for whatever reason, 2 weeks later, it'll fall off the network. And the only thing that's going to get it back on the network is going to be a full restart, going and unplugging it. plugging it back in. If that doesn't work, you'll have to do a full reset and get it back on the network. Well, that's good if you're a techie like me or you who can deal with stuff like that. Anyone else, right? The number one goal for IT is to make the IT stuff invisible to our end users. And if they're constantly having to search for that network, it's not, their phones are not connected to it automatically and stuff like that. That won't be a good thing. So to solve all of that, you go with the manufacturer of your router or of their router or something like that, which are often way more expensive than just going on and spending $50 for a repeater, right? If um, the router manufacturer makes a repeater that works perfectly with their router, of course, that one's going to be $99 or, you know what I mean, or something like that. So at that point, if you're talking about buying two of them to match with the router, you know, the system that they're using, is that cheaper or more cost effective than just moving them over to a mesh system, right? Even a more inexpensive mesh system, like um, not the one that you have, but Amazon or Euros has that base, that entry level one, right? The little flat ones. I don't know the model number of it, but it's a Euros, but it's the little hockey puck looking versions of it,
Yeah.
right? I think what you get four of those for like $199 or something like that. You know what? I guess we could be looking up the pricing.
I'm on Eero's website right now because
Okay.
what you're really saying, Jason, and I don't know if my wife will listen to this portion or not, but what you're really saying, Jason, is Greg, get the new Eero for your trailer and put in your old mesh system at their house.
I
That's what
think
I hear you saying.
I think that'll be the best solution, right? Because you can get upgraded. You could kill two birds with one stone, as they say. You can get upgraded and get them a good working system without having to deal with these Wi-Fi repeaters. And again, this is not, I'm not trashing Wi-Fi repeaters because they do work, right? The more expensive ones, the ones that are designed to work with the router systems and stuff. But these ones on again on Amazon that you can pick up for like $30, I just don't recommend them.
Okay.
They'll work good until they need it to work, and they won't work.
So
And
I
you're not
can
going to have
get
the time to support it.
the new Eero Pro 6E for $159 a single.
Okay.
And
And
then
how much are the add-ons?
I've got plenty of repeaters, right? So
Okay.
I've got 3 repeaters plus my what do I have? I think I have the Eero 6. No, I have I don't even know. They don't even sell the one that I have anymore. So the base that I have. So I could give them the base and the 2 non Wi-Fi 6 repeaters that I have that are just plug into the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I could plug one in the basement, plug one in the kitchen, and be done with that. I could get the new base. I could get the new base, so the Eero Pro 6E for $159, or the Eero 6 Plus, which is the repeater that I think I already have. So I could get that. I could get that for anywhere from $100 to $160, and then I'll keep the 1.6 repeater that I have because I actually ended up having to use it here. I'll explain that in a minute when we talk about the car. That's the one thing. The car's Wi-Fi radio is not great, so I had to actually put a repeater in the front of the trailer where the main Eero is in the back
Right.
in order
Right.
to get it to find the thing. But anyway, all right. So it sounds like that's what I need to do. So
Yeah. And again, I'm not trashing Wi-Fi repeaters. Anyone that's listening, if you have a Wi-Fi repeater, let us know in the comments and say, hey, mine never disconnects, mine never drops off of the network. But my experience, and I've tried 5 different 5 different ones, from inexpensive all the way up to the Netgear Nighthawk ones. And again, those Nighthawk ones, they really work because that was the system that I used here. It just made more sense to switch to a mesh system for the coverage of my home and hadn't had any issues since. I wish I would have did this a year ago instead of buying that super expensive Wi-Fi router that I have now that's just sitting in the living room. So I think with them, they don't sound very techy. They only have a couple of devices. I think a really inexpensive mesh system would work a lot better than just those
Well,
repeaters.
even if I buy the Eero Pro, right? Because that particular one, I may not even need my repeaters. So the Eero 6
Right,
Plus is going to get speeds up to a gigabit, but I think that's only if you're wired in, right? The Eero Pro 6E is saying that you'll get up to 2.3 wired and
right.
1.6 wireless. So I could spend the 100 or the $160 even by the time I bought two of
The repeaters,
those other
yep.
repeaters. And these current repeaters are just sitting in a box for me. Right. I mean, I've got two others that are literally just sitting in a box.
Right,
So, yeah.
right.
All right.
Yeah, you'll get more value doing it that way. You have the perfect situation, the perfect circumstances already having this hardware laying around that would be an improvement for them, right? The
Right.
hardware you have sitting in the box is a major improvement for them. So yeah, I would go that route versus a bunch of repeaters or a couple of repeaters.
If only I had figured this out when Prime Day was here.
Right. Because all of this was on sale for a really good discount. So you have any trade-ins? Oh, well, because you don't
No.
really buy any other. Because I have a bunch of. It always shows me trade-in here on this little drop down because I have all of these Alexas and these and it's always just like 10, $15. Oh, here's $3 for something, $5 for the Echo. Yeah, so it's not really huge, but I can send all of these things back and get a little discount. I noticed too around Black Friday. This is a side note. They'll add extra too to the trade in. So even though the trade in is like I saw one of the Echo Dots was like $5, they'll double that or something like that. So I actually get $10 towards a new device. So I always see this trade in thing. But if you don't have any Alexa devices, then you don't have to worry about it.
No, I don't. But they've got a Eero Pro 6E refurb on sale for $135, but I'll
Okay.
see.
I've bought
Anyway, I'll look at
refurbs from
this.
Amazon and I hadn't had any problems with them.
Yeah. All right. So I guess I'll be looking into that. Let me add that to my to-do list.
Right.
So, okay. So I've got a couple of quick tips. One of
Hmm.
them tech related, one more analog. Let me do the tech one first. So I've been doing a lot of annotation. I've got working for a client on a process flow, and it's a massively long process flow diagram, right?
Hmm.
So, but I wanted to be able to use Apple Pencil on the iPad to do annotations and questions and all that kind of stuff, and there were a lot. I've spent hours staring at this process diagram. The problem is when you export it to a PDF, it's a pretty giant PDF. The built-in PDF annotation tools when you go into files and open as a PDF, they're fine, but because of the amount of annotations, and I've had this problem before, because of the amount of annotations I was doing, it was having a hard time. So it was crashing and
Right.
restarting, and it would miss the last 3 or 4 minutes worth of work I did. When I'd go to open it, it actually would take a really, really long time to open. Um, at one point, I had to restart the iPad to get it to open up, and I thought, okay, I can't lose this work.
Yeah.
Um, so I put it in Notes, and
Okay.
all of those nice fancy PDF annotation tools actually live and breathe in Notes. I didn't have the issues with it crashing. I didn't have the issues with it missing stuff. I didn't have the issues with it opening. So if you're really marking up a PDF and you're struggling with it in the basic annotation tools, put it in Notes and mark it up there.
Yeah. Yeah. Notes has really improved from what it started with, right? From the basic text editor that we had
Yeah.
when we first started with. I mean, it is a full blown notes app now, and I'm really enjoying it. So, quick question. This may make things longer. How do you see yourself using the Notes app versus things that we used to use like Evernote and OneNote and any other Notes app? Do you see yourself using Notes more, Apple Notes more than you do OneNote? Because you were really big on OneNote.
Yeah, so I still do most of my professional documentation, note taking, and stuff in OneNote. It's
Okay.
still there.
Okay.
Um, I was doing all of my journaling and stuff in Notes, but I moved that to day one.
Right.
So really, the biggest thing I do, I take a few notes. Like I've got a bunch of notes about what I want to do with the trailer and upgrades and some of those kinds of things that I want
Hmm.
to do on it. But our show stuff is really the only thing I
Right.
do consistently in Notes now.
Right.
So,
Right. So I still have, well, I don't have a need for any of my professional stuff, but I have my all of my old notes and meeting notes and flow charts and things like that still stored. Right. I still have access to them, although I don't have a need for it. Um, Everything else, my personal life, the business, everything, I moved over to Notes, and I try not to use anything else. Unless I have to. I try to use it in Notes. So yeah, I'm all in on this new Notes, and just iPad OS 16 and 17. They just piled on to with the features and stuff, and it just makes it better and better every year. So
all right. So my non one. So I'm down in a much, 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 much warmer climate. I mean, we
right,
were hitting 109 a couple of times in the car. It was saying it was 111 last week. And now the good thing is it's not the same as Houston, where if it was 111, the feels like would be 130.
right,
So, but one of the challenges when you live in an RV like this is, yes, they're insulated. Yes, they have ACs. Yes, they have all of those things, right? But they are really not, they're not ideal for any of that kind of stuff, right? And
hmm,
so one of the hacks that people have done a ton of that we have followed up on is putting there's a brand called Reflectex, but it really doesn't matter the brand. In fact, I've stopped buying the brand name, just bought the generic stuff. But it's a foil material, like a double lined bubble material that's foil. It's kind
right.
of like what you put in your car windshield. So, um, so we have lined the cupboards, the um, our storage underneath in the front where it's constantly getting the sun on both sides. We've lined that with it. And we put it in the windows. So if the sun's on one side, we'll put it in the windows on one side and then move it to the other side because I got to open the windows. I can't. A lot of people just put it in all the windows and leave it in there and everything's just dark and they just rely on the lights from the trailer. That's
Right.
not what I want to do. But um so I told last week I told the story I bought that AC, that second portable AC. Well, for the last 3 days I haven't had to run the portable AC.
Really? Okay.
Now, the temperature has dropped down into 103, right? Down from 108 down to 103.
Yeah.
And, in that back bedroom, I was saying it would get 82, 83, 84, even though I thought that temperature wasn't quite accurate. Well, the last couple of days, if it's hit 80 in that bedroom, it was lucky.
Okay. Good.
So,
Good.
so I think there's a few things at play here. One, it is cooler, and most of these trailers will say they're rated to be able to use the onboard systems from 15 degrees up to 105 degrees. So the heater will keep
Okay.
everything good down to 15 and the AC should work up to 105. Well, the thing about that is the sun just baking it, right? I mean, that's part of the challenge. And so I don't know if it's all that Reflectex, if it's the lower temperatures or what, but yeah, I haven't had to run that portable AC. So if you are doing anything outdoors like that, that Reflectex stuff is great. You just buy it on Amazon and you cut it the way you want it and call it good. And also should help in the winter, right? Keeping the heat
Right.
in. A lot of it's designed like if you've got radiators to put behind the radiators so the heat can't go out through the wall because those radiators are right up against the wall, right?
Right.
And so it reflects the heat back in. So I'm excited to see what it does in the winter. Hopefully I won't have to run my furnace as much. But yeah, definitely feel like this has been a better fit. So that's my tip there. So
So how does it come? It's just like a 5 by 5 square or 3 by
this
3,
is
and you
coming
just
in
cut it?
by like 30 inches tall by 10 feet or by 20 feet. I think the last one
Okay.
we bought was like 20 feet. And then, yeah, you just take scissors to it. So,
Okay. Oh, so you cut it with scissors, no saw or anything like that.
no,
Just
no, no, no.
okay.
It's like it's like aluminum foil bubble wrap is what it really is
Okay.
like. So,
Okay. So just like a thinner version of just that like insulation that you can get from like Home Depot or something like
yep.
that. Okay.
So, yeah, so that's my tip. There we go. And I'm just going to give everybody a heads up. And you should know too, Jason. I just saw the yard guys pull up. And the last couple of days, they've been using chainsaws to trim the palm trees.
Okay.
So I don't know what that's going to mean for the recording here. So hopefully it won't. If I have to, I'll move inside and we'll finish the rest inside. But there you
Okay.
go.
All right.
Let's breeze through some follow-up just to give you an idea on a couple of things that we had left over from Amazon Prime Day. Jason,
Right.
tell me about your stand.
Yeah. So just real quick, I mentioned last week that that one just wasn't stable enough for me. It was a good price, but it didn't work very well with my size iPad. So I have a new one on the way. It has a wider base and a wider space to hold the iPad in place. So that one comes in Thursday. I don't know why it's taking so long to get here, but it'll be here Thursday. So I'll have more to report on that next week. But that was the only update I had.
So I'll just go through mine real fast. That I got that watch band organizer,
Right.
Jason. I ended up not going with the 12 South one because it only held like 6 bands.
Right.
So I went with this other one that I got that'll actually hold like 15. So you kind of stack them on each other. It's thick enough that you put one behind the other.
And
So
this one actually holds the cases, right? Because you have cases too that go around the watch
yeah,
over the body, and this one actually holds those too. I see.
it's just a slot in the top.
Okay.
So unfortunately, where I've mounted it, there's no room to slide them in. But that's fine
Okay.
because I only have 2 but I ended up mounting it down low by a bunch of my computer stuff. But it's working great. So really like that. I got the Apple TV mount that you told me to. I
Hmm.
have mounted the Apple TV behind the TV using 3M. So I didn't screw it in. I used the 3M
Okay.
just fine. I bought an air purifier. I just mentioned this in passing. The thing is, I don't know how to know if it's really making a difference because it's not like I have something that tells me that the air quality is improved. But I
Right.
will say that we've had smell of smoke in the air down here several days outside the trailer, and I have not noticed it inside the trailer. So even if
Okay.
it's just dealing with that, that's a great thing. And then that darn Ryobi blower that I got,
Right.
I can't tell you how often that thing comes in handy and how much I use that thing.
That's cool. That's cool. I'm glad to hear. I was curious about that thing, and I mean, it looks really cool. It looks really cool. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you got some good use out of
And
it.
one-handed use, and I mean, it'll do everything I need to. And we've got plenty of stuff I have to clear off our space like every day. So, yep. All right. So those are my updates. Are you ready to dive in, Jason?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's jump into this thing.
Buying a car. I hate the process. I
Right.
hate worrying about, am I going to get ripped off? Am I going to get a good deal? Which is one of the reasons I have, to a certain extent, an aversion to buying used vehicles, right?
Hmm.
Is because I'm not a mechanic. It's not my area of expertise. So I don't like it. I just assume I'm going to be miserable the whole time I'm doing it. And so,
Right.
but we knew we needed to, right? We were just at this point where we couldn't even turn our youngest grandson's car seat around forward, which he's eligible for now in the
Right.
car we had. So, and he was turned around in the other vehicles, but he's not turned around in this one. So he would get mad. And anyway,
Right.
so it was just time. So
Right.
our biggest thing, and I talked to Karen about this before we started the process, was can we focus on just, instead of worrying about am I getting the best price, shopping around, doing a lot of those things that I know people will say, well, you're crazy not to do.
Hmm.
Can we just say, if we find something that works and we can afford it, that we don't worry about going through, the 6 times back and forth of, well, let me talk to my manager and,
Oh yeah. I hate that.
all of that
I hate
garbage.
that.
So luckily we ended up at a dealer that doesn't do that anyway.
Okay,
which is
cool.
good. So that was our main thing. What could we afford and work for us? If we could meet those two requirements, everything else was going to be, kind of gravy.
Yeah,
So from a more specific standpoint, we wanted an SUV. We've already got a truck. We didn't want a car. I don't like cars. They're too low to the ground. I usually don't fit,
yeah,
right? So we wanted an SUV and we wanted all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. We needed a combination or some sort of combination. And I did find out that nowadays when they say four-wheel drive, it's not really four-wheel drive like your truck. It's more like it shifts it into all-wheel drive with really good traction control stuff, which is fine,
yeah,
right? Um, that's fine. So that was requirement number one, and then requirement number two was it had to fit all of the kids' car seats, right? The way we needed their seats to be.
yeah,
So then we wanted remote start, partially because we're in a really hot climate, but it's also going to get cold, so it's nice to be able to just hit the button on the fob, right, and have it start up. And like for my truck, I hit the button on the fob, it starts it up, and it puts the climate controls where they were the last time
yeah.
it was started, right? So if the heater was on, it'll turn it on. If the air conditioner was on, it'll turn it on and run it. So door keypad was really high on our list of requirements, mostly because we've had so many times when we wanted to leave a car for a kid or whatever, and you just throw the key under the key mat or the
Right,
floor mat, right? And then they get
right.
in with the keypad. Now, we lived in a smaller town. It was less scary to do that. I'm not sure how much we'd want to do that down here. And you don't do that in Houston. But
No, yeah, no, not at all.
and then so the last one, I know these aren't a lot of requirements, but the last one was really no black interior. Here's the
Okay,
problem. No black interior is ridiculously hard to find. I've been told that 85% of across all makes and models are going to have black interior.
right,
And the
right,
reason for that is they said they've gotten better about it not getting as hot. And it looks better. I mean, it really does, right? And it's more durable. I mean, brown is more likely to stain, even though you'd think
right.
it would be cooler. And same thing with a gray or something like that. So those were our requirements. Any
So
questions about those?
yeah, why not the black interior? Right, because now it's not just that old plushy leather or that old thick leather and stuff. Right, they use a blend of different materials and what do they call those poly materials and stuff like that. That yeah, what was the deal with the black interior?
It
And
was
what
a
color did
hundred.
you want?
It was 108 degrees when we were shopping for cars.
Right, right, right. But
So
again,
that was the big thing.
a
That
lot of
was the
these
big thing.
are, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I get it, I get it. So, what
You got
color
to
did you
understand,
want?
the last car I bought was a 2016. My
Right,
truck
right,
is a 2016. You're talking 8 years of advancements
right.
in stuff. I haven't even looked at new cars or thought about new cars since I bought that truck
Okay,
at all.
okay.
So the fact that the materials are going to reflect more of the heat back and they're not going to get quite as warm, and about a bunch of this tech we're going to talk about, I didn't even have a clue,
Right,
right?
right,
Zero clue.
right.
So we didn't really care. We were just hoping it wasn't going to be black. So, but again, 85% of everything is black. So guess what color of interior I
I'm
have?
sure it's black.
It's black. Actually, it's two-tone. It's black and
Okay,
gray.
okay,
So
okay.
not horrible.
Which I'm sure it looks good. So okay,
Right.
that clears up. That clears it up. But yeah, yeah, I'm with
Yep.
you on that. My my wife's Flex, her truck is a 2015. So we only know about these new technologies and things that we want in our next vehicle because we rent a lot of vehicles, right? Because we're
Okay.
on the road back and forth. So uh, I have an idea of what we're looking for, and I'm sure this was some of the stuff that you ended
Yeah.
up with. But yeah, yeah,
I can't
I'm
even
with you.
remember the last time I rented a vehicle. So,
Yeah,
because
and
I
my
just do Uber. So,
yeah. When you're in town, it is a lot cheaper, a lot
yep.
more convenient to just deal with someone else's vehicle.
Yep.
Um, my personal truck, the one I told you, my engine blew in that one. So we're in the market, but I'm passively looking. I'm
Yeah.
not stressed about it. I'm not going to get pressured into a deal that I don't want. I'm happy. I'm I'm okay. I'm taking it easy. But
Yeah.
that one was a 2009. So
Yeah.
most of the things inside didn't work. The kids hate to drive in it. I used to pull up to the school to pick them up from school, and they would have that look like, oh, I have to ride. No
Yep.
seat warmers, no things like that. So yeah, they get in it, they complain the whole time. And I'm like, you know what? Let me take you to your mom. I didn't even want to come and pick you up. So but
Yeah.
anyway, back to Greg's
Yeah.
purchase.
Now, the other part of the plan was we really wanted to do, we were thinking we wanted to do used, right?
Right.
And part of that was because, so we just sold our home, um, and did well. And so that's
Hmm.
great. But we were thinking, okay, we're just going to pay cash. Part of that's because I'm self employed and my business has been slow for the last few months on purpose, right?
Right.
That's been a deliberate. I haven't focused on it. So the thought of trying to get qualified for, financing or something like that, I just wasn't sure I wanted to deal with it. So
Right.
used cash, call it good. And then again, the plan was to not spend a ton of time haggling and all that, just because that's an absolute miserable
Right.
process. It's just horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. I hate that whole part of the process.
Yep. All right. So we went into this knowing there were basically four tiers of SUVs that we wanted to look at, and not the biggest of the, not the big fit for families in. So it was small up to that almost big, almost giant size, right?
Right.
And one of them we really didn't think it was going to work because um, we've had that before and just didn't think it was going to be much better than the situation we were in, even though it would be, a nicer vehicle from a car seat standpoint, right?
Right.
Because what we were really hoping to do was get the smallest one. Um, and we had talked to my wife's twin. They have one, and they thought, yeah, the car seats will probably fit in the back there. Well, when we opened up the door, just looking at the one in the showroom, I was like, yeah, no, those car seats are they're not gonna fit back there, right? You
Yeah.
can tell because they've got two semi-regular size seats, but then the middle seat is like this 12-inch wide
Yeah.
thing, right? And it's
Yeah.
just not going to function. So we didn't even go drive those, even though that was going to be the fun. That's what we were hoping. If it was just Karen and I, we probably would have still gone in that direction. Yeah. So
So
then we
the
looked at the
the
next.
grandkids influenced this purchase a lot. I
Oh,
can tell.
absolutely. Having to have the car seats in there was
Yeah.
huge, right?
Yeah.
So we looked at the next one up, and it was like, yeah, no, that's probably not going to work either. It might have fit the car seats in there, but it would have been pretty darn tight. And here's my wife hauling 3 car seats into the showroom and putting these well loved, well used car seats, you know how car seats look,
Right.
right?
Right.
Into these brand new, never been driven out of the showroom vehicles. I thought it was hilarious. But
Right.
yeah, that's what we were doing. So,
So, and
so
that's another thing too I didn't think of was the ease of putting in and out because again, with the rental vehicles and stuff, some of them are pretty hard to put car seats in, right? They
yeah,
have the space for them, but you're having to lean all the way over and you're having to reach the anchor. Some of the anchors are behind the seat and not, you know what I mean? Some of them
yeah,
are a hassle to put seats in and out. And you
yep,
guys are going to be doing that a lot. Is putting seats
yeah.
in and out.
So, another piece of background, my mom, when she was a nurse, actually got certified to inspect car seats.
Okay.
So, it is drilled into my head and my wife's head that you don't violate any of the rules, because if grandma saw that, you were going to get an earful,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so things like the car seats, the arms of the car seat shouldn't be touching the door
Yep.
of the car, right? And I mean, we are like millimeters away in the old vehicle. So yeah, those were all the things that we were taking into account. So level 1, level 2 just are not options. So we
Yeah.
actually went up to the next level and put the car seats in, and she's like, yes, these will fit just fine, no big deal. So we drove a couple of those, and they were used.
Hmm.
So I think one of them was like a 2016 and one of them was a 2018. Now they had a little more tech in them than the truck that I have that's a 2016, right? Just because of one of them was a limited trim, so it had a little bit better stuff. You know how that
Yeah.
kind of stuff goes, right? But these SUVs tended to have a little better tech than those trucks at the time anyway. So
Yeah.
we drove the one, it drove great. We actually took it on a full test drive and it was fantastic. Seats would fit in there fine. Um, all that kind of stuff. And then we got in the second one because it was a little newer. We drove it for 2 blocks before we took it back because it just didn't handle it just
Right.
didn't handle well, right? And a lot of this at that point was based on price, right? Okay,
Hmm.
how much cash does this mean we're gonna spend? And so, we're doing good so far. We're thinking, okay, that one's definitely a possibility. But then I said, I want to at least look at a full size. So one more
Okay.
step up, right? And so they only had one used of that particular model on the lot. And so we looked at it and it had a third row of seats,
Okay.
right? So you've got three. That one had captain's chairs. So it had two captain's chairs and then it had the skinnier double seat in the
Right.
third row. So
Which
we
are
took,
usually, especially in a full size one like that, that's usually a comfortable row. They're usually
yeah,
not so compact or whatever.
yep. So that was great. Actually, maybe that one didn't have the captain seats. I don't know. Anyway, there were three of this model that we ended up driving. One had captain seat, and then
Hmm.
the other had the bench seat. So we took that one out for a test drive. And here's the thing: I'm a big guy,
Right.
right? 6'2", 300-ish pounds, depending on the day. I'm a big guy,
Yep.
and I got in to drive that one, and there was just no comparison.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there was just no comparison from the space standpoint. And then when we thought about the third row, the fact that we could put one or two more people in with the car seats instead of it just being us and the car seats. The bonus there was that means I don't have to ride in my daughter's minivan
Right.
anymore because that's the only car that we had that could fit all the kids and then the three adults. So, and it's not that the minivan is bad. It's not. I'm just not a minivan guy. It's great for her.
Right.
Um, so anyway, so that pretty much sold us on going up from the smaller SUV to the full size
Okay.
SUV. So there just was no comparison
Yeah.
between those two vehicles.
Yeah.
So
So more on that minivan guy thing in the post show, guys. This is
yeah,
a little teaser on that.
cool.
I never expected to be a minivan guy, but we'll talk about that later.
All right. So then that was, kind of unexpected, not according to plan. Number one, we had that on our radar, but we thought that was probably last resort, right? Because
Yeah.
it also means you're going up in price, right? I mean, you're just steadily increasing in
Yeah.
price. So then I made the mistake of saying, well, if we're going to look at this, let's look at the new version of
Okay.
it. Because I think that one was 18, 19, 20, somewhere in that range. So I said, well, let's just look at the new version. And let me tell you, if you're in the market for a vehicle and want to buy a used vehicle, don't look at the new ones.
Right.
Just don't look at the new ones.
Right.
So so we looked at one that was in the showroom, and the one in the showroom was a demo model. So it was one that they had to drive as the dealer, right? The Ford said, here's a demo model. You need to be driving this. So it had like 4,000 or so miles on it.
Okay.
But it was still brand spanking new, right? I mean, other than those miles that it had been driven.
Yeah.
Um, but that one was sitting in the showroom, and it's a whole thing to get him out of the showroom. So he brought around another one that was brand new, and I think that one had the captain seats. So we took it out and test drove that one, and it was just. Oh, the other problem with the used version is they had custom wheels and tires on it,
Mm-hmm.
and it was those black wheels that are just not my style.
Right.
And it had
Right.
really, really heavy duty tread. So when you're driving down the freeway, right, you can hear the tread
Yeah.
just rumbling along. Now, I know I could have swapped out the wheels and tires for a lot less than the price difference between used and brand new, but I get that. Please don't email me. But so we drove the new one, and it was just like, okay, this is pretty darn amazing. And then the good sales tactic that the salesman used, I don't feel like I got ripped off. I don't feel like I got pressured to do something I didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Was he had us look at the discounted demo vehicle. So it
Okay.
was basically the same as the one we had test drove. We didn't even test drive it, but it was the same as we had test drove, and but it had an upgraded paint job. It had like an $800 sparkly ceramic coated whatever
Right.
painting kind of thing. So not only was it discounted in price, but they had special financing available
Okay.
for it. And so
Any
the
rebates
vehicle,
or anything because it's still a
they
new
did.
vehicle? Okay.
They
All right.
did. I got all the new vehicle rebates, the
Sounding
discounted
good.
price, the financing, special financing if they could get me qualified, right? Um, it had the bench seat instead of the captain's chairs, which my wife at first thought, nah, I think I want the others. But then we showed her how you get into the back row. And she's like, oh, that'll work just fine. Because she was worried about the kids putting 2 car seats in the back row, which is where we put them, and
Yeah.
having the kids have to crawl over the bench, right, to get into the back. But that's ended up being a non-issue. So,
Right.
so yeah, at that point, it was like, okay, I think this is the right vehicle for us. You know,
Yeah.
all of the bits and pieces seemed to come together. It seemed to be the best choice for us, other than maybe one of that mid-tier used, little bit smaller, which wouldn't have been nearly what we ended up with. So you know, you go through this process, and basically I told them, I said, look, I don't have a problem with you pulling my credit. I know where my credit scores are.
Mm-hmm.
But if we get into this, you're going to have to go through all of the income verification and all of that kind of stuff. That's going to be more difficult. And we actually were shopping for this on a day when the banks were all closed here. It was Utah state holiday. So it's
Okay.
not like I could have gone to the bank and got a cashier's check to pay for a vehicle or the deposit or any of that kind of stuff. So there was a few weird things there. So it's, look, I don't have a problem. You want to go pull my credit? Go ahead. Tell me what it would look like paying cash for this vehicle and then give me 2 financing options.
Right.
Right. And so they did that, and he come back and set it in front of us, and we asked him to leave so that we could talk about it for just a bit. And he was
Mm-hmm.
great, walked off. And um, so we talked through the different options. And so we ended up with that demo vehicle, new, but 4,000 miles. We
Yeah.
did ended up financing it. I can't believe that I got 0% financing on this
Wow.
vehicle.
Okay.
So the 2 financing options they gave us were like 0.9 for 60 months or 0% for 36 months.
Wow.
So, so yeah, we went with 0 because, I mean, the money from the house is sitting in a high yield account right now, right? And
Yeah.
so it's just, I talked to my brother-in-law that does a lot more of this stuff, and he's like, yeah, I would be doing that all day long. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, that's what we ended up doing. How long we keep paying on it, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
It'll depend on a lot of different factors. But so let me talk through the goals, and then Jason, I'll pause before we get into the tech. How many of our goals did we hit?
Mm-hmm.
Did we get something we could afford? Yes. Right. I mean,
Right.
just not what we were expecting. And we aren't, I'll say it this way, we aren't affording it the way I thought we were going to afford it. Right. Because we thought we were going to pay cash, and we ended up financing it. So, but can
Right.
we afford it? Yes. Which has got to be the number one thing you do. Do not keep up with the Joneses or live beyond your
Right.
means with something
Right.
like this.
Right.
So,
We'll talk about that too more in the post show. But yeah, I think so many people, that's where they go wrong from the start, is getting something that's way out of their price range, and that they just can't afford, all because of financing and all of these rebates and other options and stuff.
yep.
So
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. fits all the car seats and then some.
Right.
And then some we hadn't really considered, but I'm so glad that we did. We already took it on we had a church dinner up the canyon up here. It was about a 45-minute drive, and we took all the
Hmm.
kids and Kristen. And I got to tell you, it was so much better
Right.
riding in that thing that way. So,
Yeah.
yes, it is an SUV. It does have all-wheel / four-wheel drive. It's got several drive modes that who knows when I'll even use a bunch of those drive modes, which is
Hmm.
part of the tech that it has. It does have remote start, and I mean remote. We'll talk about that when I get there.
Yep.
It does have the keypad entry, and I ended up with the two-tone interior that I mentioned. It's black and gray. So
Okay.
the black, it's majority black. The center of the seats, like the squares in the seats and stuff, are the gray part of
Okay.
it, but everything else is black. So
And there's one more thing too that you don't have on the list that we talked about, and from my understanding, and I believe this is the case, maybe 80 to 95% of the time, it's just going to be Karen and the grandkids, right? So it has to be a comfortable ride for her, not too big for her. I know, like you mentioned, you're a big guy, so you can drive a big 18 wheeler, trailer or whatever, and be comfortable in it. But is it a comfortable ride for her and the kids, right?
yeah,
And it sounds like she'll be able to manage these car seats without you, when it's just her and the kids, taking them in and out and getting them to their destination, doing what she needs to do there, and then coming back.
yep,
Um, it sounds like this is a good choice for her too,
yeah.
right?
So the car seat, the youngest car seat is in the middle of the first row,
Okay.
and the middle is always the best place to put kids. So if you get side impacts, right?
Right.
And then the other two car seats are in that back row, which is all that'll fit back there, which is fine. And then both of the seats on the side of the car seat in the front row, you pull the latch and the back comes down a little bit and they slide clear forward, and the kids can crawl in and she can get to them and unbuckle them and buckle them. No problem, but she's not having to climb over any of those kinds of things. And then,
Right.
yes,
Right.
absolutely, it's a comfortable ride for her. I mean, the front is big enough that I don't even put the seat all the way back.
Okay.
So my daughter actually climbed in, and she's 5'10", 5'11", something like that.
Okay.
And she climbed in behind me, and I only had to scoot the seat forward just a little bit, and I was still plenty comfortable, and she had enough room.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's from a space standpoint, it'll be great. And honestly, most of the time it's going to be my wife driving back and forth from our
Yeah.
place to my daughter's, which is only a couple of miles, right? So not a
Yeah.
big deal. But then she's going to have the kids in there, and we haven't hit school yet. So that's when she's going to be going to one school to pick up one kid, going to the other school to pick up another kid, and hitting daycare to pick up the third kid. So
Right.
this is going to make this a much, much. Now, if they were all on the front row, which we actually could put them all in that front row, they all could go there if
Okay.
that's the way we wanted to do it,
And
right?
the oldest will be in a booster seat maybe in a year or so, right?
Yeah.
Instead of a
Yeah.
car seat.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the two are in the in-betweens, right? They're not the convertibles that go backwards and all that kind of stuff. So they're a little bit
Right.
better. But yeah. Yeah, absolutely. This will just keep getting easier and
Yeah.
easier as we go on. So yeah. She was super happy with that. I was more hesitant. She had zero red flags. She was pretty excited about the whole thing
Okay.
too.
Good.
So
Good.
yeah.
Because technically, you still have your truck. So technically, this is her vehicle, right? This
Yeah.
is going to be her daily driver. This is going to be her main
Yep.
vehicle. So yeah,
Yeah.
as long as she was happy with it, then yeah,
Yep.
I'm with you.
All right. Should we talk about the tech then?
Yeah, yeah. Let's get into it. Oh, are you ready to do the reveal? What is it? What are we? Because I want to look at some of the specs and stuff as we're going through it.
It is a Ford Explorer.
Okay, and you have a Ranger, so
No, I
you
have a F-150.
okay? It's an F-150. Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
thought it was a Ranger
No,
all
I
this time.
have to have an F-150. A Ranger wouldn't pull the trailer.
Right,
So,
right, right.
so no, I've got an F-150. We have an Escape, the old style Escape body that Wyatt drives. It's got 150,000 miles on it.
Okay,
So we looked at the Bronco, which would have been the sporty, fun one. Then we
right.
looked at the Escape for 2 seconds. We drove the Edge, and we ended up with the Explorer.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah.
Let me pull it up here.
All right. While Jason's pulling it up, tech that I'm excited about, I had on my wish list CarPlay.
Yeah,
Okay, because riding with Dustin in Houston, those couple of trips, I was like, okay, that's really, really nice, and it would be good.
yep.
Um,
And I
so
told you that was a
yes,
must for me when we're
yeah,
renting a car, CarPlay, or I'm not renting that car.
and I think going forward, if it doesn't have CarPlay, I don't want it. Now, here's the thing. So it's supposed to have wireless CarPlay, but this particular one has Sync 3, and they've come out with Sync 4. So with Sync 3, they used to have a Sync app that you had to have on your phone, and that's what connected to the wireless version of CarPlay. So the wired's fine. It's got a USB-A and a USB-C port, so no matter which one you want to use, you can plug in and do wired CarPlay, no problem, right?
Yeah.
Just fine. Um, but the thing is, they advertise it as wireless CarPlay, but if you don't have that app, it doesn't work. And there's this big thing on their website now that says that app has been pulled from the App Store.
Yeah.
So unless you had downloaded it previously, there's no way to get it there. And so they actually talked to one of their master technicians, and he says, well, sometimes we can do an update on our end on the system, not when you connect to Wi-Fi, it gets a software update, right? But
Yeah.
sometimes there are some updates that they can do, but they couldn't promise it because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, to get it to advance far enough to be wireless. So I think that's a little bit of false advertising, in my opinion,
Hmm.
or frustrating advertising, as I wrote it in here. Um, so I wasn't sure, how often are we going to use it? But I will say when I do plug in, I'm just like, okay, it's just a totally different experience. And I actually was playing a song via Bluetooth, and then I plugged into CarPlay,
It's a
and
difference.
the enhanced
Yes.
sound, I just went, okay, no brainer. So then I went down and looked up adapters, because they have tons of wireless adapters. As long as you
Right.
have wired CarPlay, these wireless adapters work, and there are a whole bunch of them on Amazon, and they range anywhere from like $40 to you can spend
Yeah.
whatever you want, and these are just the adapter, not the screen, like we've talked about before. This is another thing I wish I had known I needed during Prime Day, because I'm sure I would have got it, but I narrowed it down to two because one of them had 58,000 reviews and was a 4.8 rating,
Okay.
and another one was 12,000 reviews and a 4.8 rating.
Okay.
And what it came down to was that second one with the 12,000 reviews was regularly priced more expensive, but was on sale that made the prices be basically sixes,
Okay.
right? So they ended up being basically the same price. And so I went with that second one. It actually will be here today.
Okay.
So
Cool.
I'll
You
have
get
an
to test
update
it out.
next week on that. And then oh, Dustin, whether he listens or not, if this works out, I know Dustin wishes he had wireless. I'm going to buy him one for his birthday and send it to him so that then he can have
Yeah.
wireless CarPlay too. Um, so yes, it has CarPlay. CarPlay is awesome.
Yep.
And yes, it'll be worth having the adapter so that either my wife or I, when we get in, we don't have to worry about who plugged in first, right, to the charging ports and stuff to connect in. It is frustrating that there's more rumors about other car companies not wanting to adopt it. Rivian just announced that they're not going to do CarPlay. But there's two things, and I'll be interested to see how the updates to CarPlay come in the fall, right? Because there's updates coming, but
Hmm.
there's Apple's got kind of two pieces. They've got the CarPlay that takes over everything, that takes over basically the car OS and shows you your speed and all of those kinds of things, right? I'm not sure that's what I want Apple to do for me. I think I just want the car manufacturers that have been doing that forever, right, to continue to do it forever. Um,
I don't know.
but I like my dashboard to stay the way it is, but to have Apple take over the whole entertainment. Oh, that was the only thing about the one Edge that we drove, is it had a 10-inch screen.
I know. I'm looking at that. I wondered if your model had that.
The Explorer we have does not. It's
It
got the
doesn't.
smaller one.
Okay.
So yeah, it's about the size of my iPad mini. So versus the size of a full iPad. So the Edge had the bigger because it was a higher trim level, right? But
Right.
anyway, but there's also something to be said for having real buttons, in my opinion. If you listen to ATP at all, they will go off on car manufacturers that are removing all of the buttons and expecting you to do everything on the touchscreen, right? I
Right.
like I can do the climate controls and stuff on the touchscreen, but I like having the buttons, and I like having the buttons on the steering wheel for stuff. So, I
Yeah.
like it the way it is. Now, maybe Apple will do something really cool if they take over all of Ford's display stuff, but so far, yeah, no.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I don't know. I think if anybody can do it better than any car manufacturer, especially the issues that we've had with sync, like that you mentioned,
yeah,
Apple can do it better.
yeah,
Um, but another note on this physical button thing: had you would have asked me, had we would have had this conversation 2 weeks ago, I would have been like, no, no. I mean, physical buttons, that's old fashioned. Why have that? Let's move forward. But we had an issue last week where the screen and any of they're capacitive touch buttons, right? So they're just a flat
yeah.
surface and you touch. None of that was functioning. The only thing, none of the climate control was functioning on the dash, which is a separate, screen and everything. It says climate controls temporarily unavailable. The only thing that was on in Houston with 95-degree weather was the defrost blowing heat from the window. And
Oh
we had to
gosh.
ride to several locations. We found a fix. We disconnected the battery terminal, left it overnight, came back on the next day. Everything was off. I was able to turn on the AC, but we had to endure 2 days of riding with just the heat blowing, the defroster blowing in the heat in the window. Looked online at a few forums, and of course, this is a common issue with my model of Flex. A lot of people had it. They just disconnect it and leave it overnight. But yeah,
Yeah,
physical buttons with that issue would have really been what we
yeah.
needed. So yeah, we're a problem to have. But that was totally separate.
For right
Back
now, I
to
think it's the right balance, right? Take
yeah,
over the navigation, take over the entertainment, let me do my podcast, those kinds of things, and then leave the car to the car for now. I
yeah,
think that's the right mix at the moment. Now, we'll see how stuff advances, and we'll see what this new version of Apple CarPlay does too, right? So, okay, so that was a big one, and yeah, if this wireless adapter works the way it should, with 4.8 stars on that
yeah.
many reviews, I can't imagine I'm going to have issues, but that's going to be a must going forward. The other tech that's in here, keyless entry. Um, I actually had to look on the pictures I took of the car to figure out where the place for an actual key was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's there, but it's one of those super, super skinny keys that you have to press a button and pull out of the fob, right?
Okay.
So remember, my other vehicle is a 2016, so it's got an actual key that you put in a slot and turn the ignition.
Yeah.
So this push button stuff, I've only driven a couple of vehicles that ever even had it. So, um, and the fact that you just keep the key in your pocket, right? And you grab the handle and it
Yeah.
recognizes that the key is
Never
right there
grab it
and it
out.
unlocks it and all that stuff. And then touch capacitive on the handle with a little teeny, same color as the paint, lock icon that you touch to lock the doors, which is kind
Yeah.
of cool too. So, um, now the keypad is there too. It's one of those digital keypads. It's not like the ones I've had before that are actual buttons. It's a digital touch capacitive one, right? That you
Yeah.
do the stuff so you can unlock it there too. But um, that's super cool. But remote features, I didn't even consider this. The fact that, and because I know you can do it on a Tesla and you can do it in some other places, but I didn't even think we were going to be in the market for this.
Mm-hmm.
Ford has the Ford Pass app, and you can, from the app, lock, unlock, start, stop. So you can start the vehicle if you know you're going to be walking out in a few minutes, which is great here to get the AC cranking up. You can schedule a start. So we went into the temple on Friday, and it
Mm-hmm.
was the middle of the afternoon, and we knew about what time we'd be coming out. So I just scheduled the vehicle to start 15 minutes before we knew we
Nice.
would be getting in it. And we came out and it was cool down and it was up. Now the gas mileage is probably horrible, which is, a whole other movie, but it's better than getting in the car and sweating all over those brand new leather seats, right?
Right.
So
Right.
you can also extend the time on a remote start, so it'll run for like 15 minutes. But there's a button that says run it for longer if you want it to. So you get the location, you get the percentage of your fuel. There's maintenance tracking, all really, really, really cool stuff, right? And so my
Yeah.
wife can do it on her phone. So I'm set up as the primary, but I was able to approve her in. So both of our phones are connected to that, and we can do all of that stuff right from the phone because it's got a built-in modem. And my
Right.
understanding is that's free for life for those features. So great.
Okay. But
Yeah.
anything else like for like the in-car Wi-Fi and stuff, you can just buy a SIM card, right, from Verizon, AT&T, whoever
I would
your
assume so.
okay.
But I don't know the answer to that. And it may not be available on our trim level either,
Okay.
right? Because it's only an XLT. I mean, we didn't get a limited or a titanium or any of that kind of stuff. So
Okay. You went with that. That was my next question too. What did
yeah,
you go with the
yeah,
XLT? Okay.
yeah. Now, Jason, this is a total geek thing, but I had it for like 2 days and I went, wait, do they have a watch app?
Right?
So
Right?
I look on my watch, and sure enough, there's an icon that says Ford.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, I wonder what they made available on that app.
Can you
Well,
unlock and well, you need to keep fob anyway, but can you lock and unlock it remotely from the watch app?
I can lock it, I
Nice.
can unlock it, I can remote start it from the
Nice.
watch app, and
I
then I
love
can
it
extend the
already.
time or turn it off if I need to as well.
Okay, so it has more control, more options.
Yeah, so it's got, it doesn't have all of the statuses and all that other kind of stuff. But yeah, lock, unlock, start it. It'll tell me where the vehicle is. So like I can see where my wife is, and then there's a button here. I haven't hit it. I think that button is to flash the horn or the lights. So I'm assuming that. And then it's telling me how many miles I have left on the gas on it, all on my watch.
Nice. That is
Now,
pretty cool.
do I need to do that?
Of
No.
course not, but it's
Is
there,
that almost as good as that Dick Tracy photo you have of me taking a phone call on my watch?
right?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah, man, that is like you said, it's not something that you need, but it will come in handy at times. It it,
Yes.
it will.
Oh, I've stopped using the app. I just use my watch now,
Yeah.
right? So, I know we're getting ready to leave church. I can hit the button or, whatever the case may be. So I'm super excited. And tied into that, right? So like on my F-150, it'll remember the last settings we had. On this one, you can actually tell it to remember the last settings or to auto handle the climate controls. So
Okay.
it knows if it's super hot outside that it needs to start cooling down the interior of that vehicle. So if I had it set to something, it'll do it. If not, it'll uh, auto figure out
Right.
what it needs to do. Super, super cool.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
like
So
that.
didn't expect any of that kind of stuff, right? And some of that would have been available on the used one, but not as much. Safety features. Here's the kicker. This is where it comes into, if my wife's going to be driving this in the middle of the winter for, 3 hours to get to family without me, safety with my grandkids in the car, right? Or my
Right.
grandkids and my daughter, right? It's hard to put a price on safety. Now, would the other vehicle have been safe? Yes. Some of this stuff I understood it had. Some of the stuff they were talking about went over my head. And some of it I've just figured out as we've been driving this thing. So there is a feature that when you pull up to an intersection and stop, it holds the brake for you. How many times have you turned around to yell at the kids and the car starts to roll
Right.
forward because you got your foot off the brake? So it holds it for you until you hit the gas. So it's going to hold the brake. If the conditions are right, so it's done it a few times here, it
Hmm.
actually shuts off the vehicle too. So like if it's not 100 degrees outside where it's got to keep cooling and all of those other things, if you're not doing certain things in the vehicle, it'll actually stop shut off the vehicle, and then when you hit the gas, it auto starts it up and you're good to go. There's
Right.
half a second to a second delay on that, which is fine. Also kind of a safety thing that you're not flying out in the middle of an intersection.
Right.
So,
Right. And man, that
um,
saves on a ton of fuel.
yeah,
That saves on fuel.
yeah. It used to be the philosophy that starting it took more fuel than letting it sit idle, but everywhere I'm seeing now is no, turn it off. I mean, even at the rec
Yeah.
center that we go to, there's a pickup lane for people to come pick up their kids, and they say,
Mm.
turn off your car, don't idle it, right?
Yeah.
So, the remote start lock, it's got the collision prevention stuff. I only saw that pop up once, right? Where there was a car that slowed down all of a sudden in front of us to turn into a driveway, and it popped up and started a brake for me. So
Hmm.
fine. Lane correction. So it's going to recognize the lane, and as you start to drift, it'll actually start correcting you back into the lane.
Okay, this one
Um,
actually drives you back over. It moves you back
yeah.
over into the lane.
Yep.
Okay,
It's
not
not
just an
dramatic.
annoying beep.
Yeah, it's not dramatic. It's not going to freak you out. It's just, and you can tell there's a little bit of a vibration in the steering wheel,
Right.
right?
Right.
That you can tell that it's doing that. When you're on cruise control, you can hit a button that takes that to the next level, and it'll actually work to keep you centered in the lane, not just, from one
Okay.
side to the other or any of that kind of stuff, but actually keep
Right.
you centered in the lane. There are driver awareness alerts. So, like, if it has to try and pull you off of the line too many times, it'll yell at you and say, keep your hands on the steering wheel.
Yep.
Um, or there's sensors that it knows my hands aren't on the steering wheel. And then if you still ignore that warning, then it turns red and really is getting in your face about get your hands on the steering
Yeah.
wheel. So,
Yeah.
and then
You're really
also if
just
it does,
distracted.
yep. And if it does that too many times, like we were driving home from that dinner and I wasn't tired, but we were, testing out some of these new features safely.
Hmm.
But it came back and said, hey, driver tiredness alert, rest recommended, because it thought
Okay.
it was,
Cool.
doing too much of the driving for me. So, and then,
Yeah. I mean, that is really cool, especially for long road trips, right? Because a lot of times
yeah,
you're tired. You don't realize that you're tired. You're just pushing through to the
yeah,
destination. And yeah, that's really good feature. I like that.
yeah. And then this last one, when we were driving out, because I haven't really had a chance to use the cruise control, they call it adaptive cruise control. There's no regular cruise control in this that we can tell of. There's no way I can turn off the adaptive. I can
Hmm.
turn off the brake hold when you stop. I can turn that piece off. I can change the driving modes from normal to eco to slippery to snow to heavy snow. There's a bunch of those driving modes. That's how you get into the all wheel and the four wheel drive, right?
Hmm.
But I can't seem to find a way to turn off adaptive cruise control. So we're going out to this, and we're behind another car, and it's not a giant freeway where you can pass all the time. So I turn on the cruise control and I set it at 70. But what I'm finding is that I was sitting more at like 64 or so,
Okay.
or something like that. And um, so what it is it's the adaptive cruise control that there's a button that you tell it like how much distance you want it to maintain between you and the car in front of you.
Okay. Nice.
And so
Nice.
you can shrink that or you can make it longer. And then basically it's using its sensors and cameras to keep you there. So if the car in front of you is only going 65 miles an hour, it's going to settle you into the right spot. And then you're
Yeah.
only going to go 65 miles an hour, even if your cruise control is set at 70.
Okay. Hey, I
So,
like that. And I use cruise control a lot.
yeah.
And yeah, I like that.
So I was actually thinking, man, cruise control is broken here. But then we got to one point where the car, I still had it on cruise control, and the car moved over into another lane, and we accelerated because
Okay.
the car was no longer in front of us. And so it accelerated right up to 70. And then on the way home, there were no cars in front of us. And so it was keeping us. So, no, the cruise control was not broken. And my daughter's in the back Googling. My wife's trying to look in the manual. And my daughter's in the back Googling and
Hmm.
figuring out how to tell it how much distance to put. So it's just a button on the steering wheel, and you press it and it goes up to a longer distance, or you can press it and you can go down. There's a minimum distance that won't let you go
Okay.
past it.
Yeah, you don't
So,
want to tailgate someone.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
want the truck to tailgate someone, but yeah.
So that was really cool. And then a few things that aren't on here, like it'll recognize the speed limit signs. and then it'll pop up and tell you what the speed is supposed to be. And then you can turn it off, but we have it on, that it'll
Hmm.
alert you if you're going too fast based on what that speed limit should be.
Right.
And
Right.
we've got the max tolerance it'll let you have is 5, right? So 5 miles an hour. So we hit 5 miles an hour over, and the speed limit, it's a white speed limit sign, tells you what, just looks just like a speed limit sign on the dash.
Hmm.
And then if you go over the 5, if you hit 6, it'll start flashing and tell you that
Okay.
you're going too fast.
I've had
So
one vehicle that did that adjusted the 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 speed limit by what it said on the map, right? It'll pop up on the
yeah,
map and it had the little, there's 75 in this zone. It drops down to 60 and it'll let you know when you're going over or too slow.
and I think this one is recognizing the signs because that's what the setting said. But
Okay.
also, I know a couple of places where I've gotten onto a road because we're not as familiar with the roads around here yet, and it's showing nothing until
Right.
we pass the speed limit sign, and then it's popping up.
Okay. So
So
yeah, so this one's actually reading the signs. That's
I
pretty
think so.
cool. That's pretty cool. So I'm going down the list and I'm seeing, so it has the automatic LED low beams and stuff like that,
Yep.
automatic
Yep.
high beams and all of that. Man, that is I hadn't had that feature in any of the vehicles, but man, I think that'll be a really cool. It's some of those things where you don't know that you would need it until you have it. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
know that how much you would depend on this feature and stuff. And yeah, I
One
like
of our
that. The
trips
auto high
home, right?
beams.
The first trip home at night and not having to mess with the cruise control, letting
Yeah,
it adapt, and not having to mess with the lights just means you can focus more
yeah. Focus more on
on the
just
road.
the road. Yeah, just
Yeah.
driving. So I like that. The auto lamp. Yeah, really cool features in this thing.
Yeah.
So LED signature light, and does this model? Well, I'm looking at your model. It has that. So when you open the doors, it shines the Ford logo on the ground. Is
Nope.
that the one? Okay.
No.
So
At
I've
least I
seen
haven't
some
noticed
with
that
that.
part. And I think I would. So the only ambient LED lighting it's got two little blue LEDs up by the controls for the lights, like to hit the interior lights and stuff like that, and the
Okay.
panoramic roof, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
That was
Them.
actually another bonus that we thought would be. It's not cool right now with the sun beating in, but it will be
Right.
pretty awesome later on. Yeah,
Yeah. I know rainy days with the kids, and it's raining really hard. Open that up and let them
yeah,
look up. Yeah, I like those. So as far as car tech goes, it is packed with a lot of tech. Even like I just mentioned, some things that you didn't know that you would use that you would definitely take advantage of. Anything outside of CarPlay that you wish this model had that it doesn't have? Was there something that maybe wasn't on the list? Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Because it sounds like it has everything. So I
the
gotta
problem
think of
was
anything.
I didn't know what to think I needed.
Okay.
Right? I mean that was part of my problem. Right? Is from a tech spec. As a matter of fact, when we were talking about the difference between older models versus the one we ended up with, he's like, some of the safety stuff, if you weren't used to having it now, you won't even know you need to miss it, right?
Right.
And that was definitely the case for this.
Right.
Is I just didn't even know I needed some of this stuff.
But one thing that you do know that you need was a tow hitch. Does
And
this
it
one come with
has it.
one? It
It
has one.
does.
Okay.
And 5,300 pounds towing, 530 hitch weight. So I can put a bike rack on it, and I could hook up
Okay.
a travel trailer or something, or not a travel trailer, but a U-Haul trailer or something like that. It can't
Right.
pull my camp trailer.
So it can't
Um,
pull a camper. Okay.
no, I mean the camp trailer is going to weigh, what is it, like 9,000 pounds, something
Yeah.
like that. So
So I'm surprised you didn't go with that. Didn't influence. I mean, I know we talked about the route that you're thinking about going. You won't need to, tow it up and down the highway and stuff with the route you plan on going. But I'm surprised that didn't influence, more. But again, you still have your truck. It's not going anywhere. So I
right,
can understand that. All right. So
Yeah, I mean, because I would have had, in order to pull our trailer, it isn't just the weight, it's also the length,
yeah,
right? I would have had to go to another.
yeah.
So
What you were planning on doing? Maybe. I mean, I know we hadn't talked about it in a while, but you were thinking even like 250 or something bigger.
yeah, yeah. To get anything more than what I already have, I would have been going up to the 1 ton.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Okay. So I don't know if you want to talk about pricing and costs and all of that difference, or
I
you want to.
I don't really. It was way more,
Right.
right? I mean,
We'll just leave it at that. It was way more.
yeah, it was way more. That was the thing. But my wife's take on it was, I'd rather put the miles on it. I think the first one had like, it was just out of warranty, right? So it had 36,000 plus
Okay.
miles on it. So it would have just been out of warranty. And her thought was, that's a lot of miles we could put on it instead of somebody else having put on it. And I know they'll run forever nowadays. I mean, 100,000 miles used to be the top limit of vehicles, and now that's just
Right.
not the case. But so yeah, I mean, it was expensive.
Yep.
It made me sick to my stomach after we did it. I think it was, you know, back in the day, the catalogs used to have good, better, and best, right? You used to
Yeah.
have shoes, good shoes, better shoes, and the best shoes that you could buy.
Yeah.
And I think about a lot of the decisions that I make kind of like that. And I think, is this a good decision, a better decision, or a best decision? I think it was at least a better decision, right? I mean, could I have gotten the used one and set aside a whole bunch of money for extra repairs and spent a couple grand to swap out the
The
tires and
tires and yeah. Yeah.
the rims and that kind of stuff? Yes, absolutely, I could have done that, but I think we got the right style and size of vehicle for sure. That was the best, right? That is definitely a best decision.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm pleased with it. My wife is pleased with it. Um, we can afford it. We didn't go beyond our means, right? And I'm not, if we hadn't have sold the home, we wouldn't have been able to do this,
Right.
right? I mean,
Right.
there's just no way we would have not been able to do this, but we were fortunate and blessed enough to be able to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was more expensive. Probably at least 2x what we had gone in planning to spend. Um, at least on the low end of what we had planned to spend. Maybe the high end's a little closer to 1.5x, but
Right.
expensive. I mean, you can look them up and see what they are.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I
so
looked up a few of them, and some of them are reasonable, but to get the features and stuff that you want, the safety features that were that were necessary, right? Your wife and your grandkids are going to be on the road at night sometimes. Um, she's going to spend a majority of time in it. A lot of this stuff was more of a necessity to have. The tech stuff, the apps, and all of that. Yeah, that stuff that's not really needed, but yeah, some of these safety features alone makes that purchase worth it, right? The peace of mind, to
yeah,
um, the easeability, like I mentioned, just the ease of being able to put those seats in, because a lot of times she's going to be alone, and like you said, seeing her carry those 3 car seats in to try them out in these different lots and stuff, that's going to be most of her time is doing that by herself. So you want it to be easy for her. So yeah, no, at some point you say the price doesn't matter. I have to do what's best for the family, and it sounds like that's what you.
yeah, yeah. I feel like I feel like we did.
Yeah, yeah,
So
good choice. So I see now you say your biggest problem. My
yeah,
biggest problem for me, I noticed, and like I mentioned the kids earlier, they hated to see me coming with my raggedy truck that smelled like gasoline and all of that. But I owned it. It was my truck. I loved it. But one of the biggest problems for me was driving in my wife's truck with the Bluetooth and the Chevy Sync and the seat warmers and the, you know what I mean, just having all of that extra technology, which I love because I'm a geek, and then having to go back to my 2009 Chrysler Pacifica was missing all of that. So what's your biggest one of your biggest problems?
Yeah. I don't know. I might have driven my truck since then,
Right.
but now my biggest problem is, besides paying for this,
Yep.
right? Is, my truck doesn't have any of the cool stuff.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
no longer the cool kid on the block. Uh,
Right.
so I mean, if we
Yeah.
ever decide we need to upgrade the truck, and it'll happen. I mean, I'm hitting 100,000 miles, which is fine, right? It runs just fine, and all that kind of stuff. And if we're really, one of our plans was to not have to drive the truck nearly as much. Was another reason to get this, because this will get better gas mileage and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, so if that sits around more, then not as big of a deal. But if we ever do decide we need to upgrade it, then we'll be looking at getting some of these features.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Some of them some
yeah,
of them are a must. And I've spent time upgrading somewhat my my old truck to have the Bluetooth and certain things like that. But yeah, that's one of the things I noticed is I would drive her truck any chance it was available. Right. Of course, I love my truck. I would drive it whenever I had to. But if I didn't have to, yeah, we would all definitely jump in her truck with the comforts of some of this modern technology. So I'm
yeah.
with you.
All right, Jay, you got any other questions for me?
No, no, that was it. It was mostly around the towing thing and the technology and stuff, and you pretty much answered all of those questions. So yeah, I'm glad you upgraded. I'm glad you made the right choice. So as long as you're happy with it, I definitely know Karen's happy with it. So yeah, no, good deal. That was all I had.
All right. Well, I hope this is useful. I mean, I'm not saying this is the path everybody should take, and this is the path we took. I mean, it's way too late at this point, but
Right,
um, I hope that kind of the logic that we went through and talking through some of the stuff, like if you haven't bought a car in a long time and are thinking about upgrading one, and knowing that some of these safety features exist and some of this stuff, whatever's important to you. I was watching a video on RVs, and the guy made the comment that said, look, if it works for you, then it's right for you, right? It doesn't
right.
have to work for everybody else. So my situation may not be. So that's what we hope to do, but also to talk about this car tech. And we'll follow up next week, and I'll let you know how it's going, and I'll let you know how that wireless CarPlay adapter goes. All right. Stick around for the post show if you're on the podcast, or don't forget the next step to hit that next video where we'll talk about our first car or favorite car or some combination of both. So Jay, you got anything to wrap us up here?
No, no, that was it, guys. I'll see you in the post show. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everybody.